In the heart of London, a new sound emerged from the streets. Raw, unapologetic, and fearless. UK drill. But behind the beats and bars, there's another story being told. A story of survival, crime, and the unyielding grip of a system that has been chasing these artists since day one. For KO, DA, CB, Suspect, and Scars, the rise to fame didn't come without sacrifice. The streets they rap about, they live them. But now the very system they speak out against has turned its focus on them. With charges hanging over their heads and years in prison on the line, they're now forced to face the consequences of the very lives they rapped about. This is the reality, a war between the system and the rappers, and as it stands, the system is coming out on time. First up is Scars, rapper, gang affiliate, and a notorious figure in North London. Tied to the 8th Gang, also known as Vilside, he was known for his drill music.
Waved up I'm on Pluto, wait, I'm on Mars, no Bruno, youngest boss in the ain't no Hugo, one more left.
And for the violence that often followed him. On August 25th, 2019, Scars attended a concert in Maidstone to support his good friend, rapper Mostak. But this night would not be one of celebration. Scars didn't come empty-handed. He brought a machete, just in case things went sideways. What happened that night is unclear, but the result was tragic. When things went south outside the club, Scars didn't hesitate. A brawl broke out, and Scars was seen on CCTV stabbing Andre Bent, leaving one dead and several others injured. The chaos wasn't even gang-related. It was civilians caught in the crossfire of a world that Scars was a part of. Scars fled straight to Greece, but the system was on his tail. 6 days later, Scars was back on UK soil, arrested and charged with murder.
Back in front of you like this and I'll explain what's going on. Just put these on you. Yeah. Just listen very carefully to what I'm going to say to you, alright? You are being arrested on suspicion of murder.
His defense? Self-defense. But the rap he recorded in prison, bragging about the killing without a hint of remorse, spoke volumes, using his own music against him. They had the evidence they needed to charge him with murder. He was sentenced to 20 years behind bars. If you thought that last story was crazy, up next we've got CB, a rapper from East London whose life took a dark turn. From music to prison, his journey is nothing short of intense. Let's break down what happened. CB's story is a sharp reminder of the chaos that can surround street life. The Forest Gate rapper linked to the 7th Gang is notorious for his violent lyrics and feuds with other gangs. On July 26, 2018, CB and his crew geared up for an attack in rival territory. Armed to the teeth with a shotgun, knives, and even a clown mask, they set off on a ride-out, a mission to strike fear into their enemies. But the plan quickly unraveled when the police caught up with them, leading to a heart-pounding chase. The group crashed their car, and the weapon they packed, including a shotgun and axes, were recovered. CB and his associates were arrested and charged with attempted murder, possession of firearms, and more. As the case went to trial, CB's violent lyrics were used against him. It was clear he wasn't just rapping about the streets, he was living it. His track, Take That Risk, and others painted a dangerous reality, one that caught up with him in court. The jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 23 years. That wasn't the end of CB's troubles. While he's already serving a 23-year sentence, things have taken a darker turn. CB has now been arrested for the 2017 murder of Grenner. In 2017, Grenner was tragically stabbed to death in a convenience store. The CCTV footage didn't help much, but the murder was believed to be part of the violent gang war in Newham between the 7th and 6th gangs. Years later, the authorities have now linked CB to the murder, and he's been charged with Grenner's death. While the charge is a surprise to some, many on the streets have long suspected CB's involvement in this case. That last story was crazy, but up next we got Suspect, the rapper from Agar Grove, Camden. Suspect's name has become synonymous with violence. From the moment he took part in the brutal murders of C-Miz and Culprit, he was marked by blood and chaos. Instead of laying low, he chose to fund his crimes in drill tracks. His escape to Kenya didn't mean he was hiding, it meant he was untouchable in his own mind. During this time, he produced a series of tracks that openly boasted about his violent action. His lyrics were not subtle, they were explicit, describing the murders in detail. Rather than distancing himself from his criminal past, Suspect leaned into it, using his notoriety as a marketing tool. It was a strategy that brought him attention, but also placed him in the crosshairs of both law enforcement and the public. His continued use of social media, particularly in the form of live streams and tweets, indicated a sense of invincibility. Suspect seemed confident that he could continue to evade justice. However, this sullen presence would ultimately contribute to his downfall.
I can't like your work rate. Your work rate's too much, bro. You got a new tune every day, bro.
By 2022, Suspect had been free for 2 years and 4 months. He was living what seemed like an almost ordinary life in Kenya, with a wife, a son, and enough confidence to post about his new life online. He named his son after his co-defendant Arif, who did manage to escape the country with him. Just when he thought he was living incognito, the careless mistakes began. Pictures of him wearing a gang hat with his face fully visible started popping up online. It didn't take long for internet detectives to work out his exact location in Mombasa, Kenya. In January 2022, just when Suspect had started teasing his music debut, he went quiet. The last tweet he posted, "Everything you need is out there. Go get it." Might have seemed motivational, but it almost felt like a warning. On the 26th of January 2022, after an international arrest warrant had been issued, Suspect and Suave were arrested in Nairobi, Kenya by the Transnational and Organized Crime Detectives with assistance from Kenya's Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI. The arrest took place in the early hours of the morning, and it marked the end of an extraordinary 898-day manhunt. Who would have thought he'd get caught after living like a carefree tourist? As the trial unfolded, the details painted a tragic portrait of Suspect's life. Evidence emerged of Suspect's long history of criminal behavior, with 18 convictions for 41 offenses prior to the murder, painting a picture of a troubled past. The ongoing gang conflict in Camden, involving both suspect and culprit, was brought to light, adding a chilling context to the events. But it was the victim impact statement from culprit's mother that left everyone in the courtroom shaken. Her voice, filled with grief and pain, described the nightmare of knowing her son was hunted down by a gang. Suspect's defense tried to argue that he had never meant to kill, pointing to his troubled upbringing in foster care, but the evidence was too powerful. His songs, meant to boast of his survival, were now dissected in court, with the judge unable to hide her disbelief at the brutality described in the lyrics. The irony was crazy. The freestyle he had used to taunt and intimidate now felt like a noose tightening around his neck. On May 10th, 2023, Suspect was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 24 years. Suave received a 23-year minimum sentence. Now let's talk about DA and KO, two members of the notorious 98s gang from Homerton, East London, alongside the likes of Billy Billions and Unknown T. If you're familiar with drill, you probably heard of their names. And if you haven't, you should know that these two are the most heartbreaking stories to come out of the scene. DA's talent quickly propelled him into the spotlight, becoming one of the hottest names in drill. But things took a dark turn in 2020. While filming a music video in Hackney with Billy Billions, DA found himself in a violent confrontation that spiraled out of control. A group of men pulled guns, and in the chaos, an innocent woman, Natalie Bicknell, was struck and severely injured. The incident left her permanently disabled, needing 24-hour care for the rest of her life. DA was handed a 28-year sentence for a crime many believe he didn't commit, though he was seen as the trigger for the chain of events that led to the tragedy. Though DA wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, his involvement led to him being sentenced for a shooting that changed the course of an innocent woman's life forever. DA's story is one of success turned to downfall in a blink, a harsh reminder of the fine line between fame and consequences in the world of drill. Finally, we move on to KO, a name that echoes through the UK drill scene. The rapper, once considered one of the brightest stars, has now received one of the longest, if not the longest, sentence seen in the UK drill scene: life imprisonment with a minimum of 37 years for a murder. His story is one of immense talent, reckless decisions, and the harsh reality of living the life he rapped about. K.O., whose real name is Kamar Henry Richards, was involved in the murder of Casey Booth, a member of the rival ZT gang. On August 13, 2022, Casey was fatally shot after attending a family event. The killing was a tragedy, but what followed in the aftermath was even more shocking. Days after the murder, K.O. released the track Laughingstock, a song that unknowingly at the time contained crucial details about the murder that only the killers could have known. The lyrics would become the evidence that led to K.O.'s conviction.
Funny how we the laughing stock, someone gets slapped and the laughing stops. They blame us if we ask this not.
In drill, the line between art and reality is often blurred, but K.O.'s story goes to show how dangerous that can be. His verse in Laughingstock became his undoing as it helped the police piece together the crime. What began as the response to mockery and the pressure to avenge a fallen friend ended up costing him his future. Since his sentencing, K.O. has not remained silent. From behind bars, he has continued to drop tracks like Heavyweight and C'est La Vie, providing a glimpse into his life in prison. The emotions in his voice are undeniable. The pain, the isolation, and the regrets are all too real. There's a sense of hopelessness that runs through his music now. The tracks dive into the emotional turmoil of being locked away, reflecting on lost time, broken bonds, and the consequences of his past. It's a side of K.O. that many hadn't heard before. A vulnerable, emotional artist who has seen the price of his choices up close. Listening to these tracks, you can't help but feel the gravity of the situation he's in.
But it's like every day I got less to say, cause today's the same as tomorrow, and tomorrow be the same as yesterday. Judging me out for the count. The streets for a coin, won't be head or tails, will be death or jail. 2 fails, I got the better L.
The stories of K.O., DA, Suspect, CB, and Scar serve as a harsh reminder of the high price that comes with living a life too close to the edge. These artists who once captivated us with their raw talent, undeniable charisma, now find themselves paying the ultimate cost for the choices they've made. Behind each conviction lies a life that could have been different, a talent wasted, a future destroyed. The system didn't just catch up with them, it swallowed them whole, leaving behind families broken and communities shaken. But what's more infuriating is that their stories are just the tip of the iceberg. For every rapper behind bars, there are hundreds more waiting to fall. Will anything ever change, or are we doomed to watch the same cycle repeat itself?